This is the Good Fire Podcast, stories of Indigenous fire stewardship, cultural and social empowerment, and environmental integrity.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon of day one of the Fire and Ice Symposium, The Stories We Tell. This two-day event is in collaboration with the United Nations International Year of Glaciers Preservation, sponsored by Banff Lake Louise Tourism, Alpine Club of Canada, and the Consulate General of Switzerland. My name is Christy Beach, and I'll be guiding you through this afternoon's program. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge and be thankful that we are on Treaty 7 lands, the lands we live on, the lands we play on, and the lands that we will continue to be stewards of for future generations. This symposium is part of the 50th anniversary sessions where we decided to focus on fire and ice, given the changing narratives we're seeing in festival films and books, and to recognize the UN International Year of Glaciers Preservation. So this afternoon, we are turning our focus to fire with Dr. Amy Cardinal Christianson. She's Métis, who grew up in Treaty 8 territory in northern Alberta. She is a former research scientist with Natural Resources Canada and was an Indigenous fire specialist in the National Fire Management Division of Parks Canada. She now works with Indigenous nations across Canada on fire stewardship practices, has co-authored many books, and is the host of her Good Fire podcast. Today's interviews will be recorded and available on her podcast, Good Fire. And now we're going, woohoo! We're now going to show a really amazing video about her work.
The Indigenous people used fire on the land for thousands and thousands of years to steward the land, improve area for animals. Also, cultural burning takes away the fuel of wildfires. That balance was broken 100 years ago. Policy and legislation in different provinces and areas has made it illegal to use cultural burning, and now you have more intense wildfires in the summertime.
It's been a devastating wildfire season already, a deadly wildfire season.
Here in Canada, wildfires remain a major concern from the east to west coasts.
More than 72,000 square kilometers burned.
Between 85 and 90% of the community is gone.
Traditional lands and resources and livelihoods are at stake.
Across Canada, we're trying to bring the cultural burning and Indigenous practices back, and also that balance back to the land.
The one thing that always amazes me about being here and burning is like if you listen to the sounds, because like you hear people laughing, like you hear folks just talking, you hear like a light like fire just sparking in the background, but it's about community and bringing people together, right? I'm Amy Cardinal Christianson. I'm a Métis woman from Treaty 8 territory, so northern Alberta, and I'm a policy analyst with the Indigenous Leadership Initiative. When I go and visit Indigenous nations, elders would tell me like We need to clean the land. We need to prepare the land for when a fire does come. They want to be involved in fire and doing good things in their territories. Indigenous fire stewardship is any activity where Indigenous people are asserting their rights to their territories through fire. There's lots of really good examples in Canada. Coast to coast to coast, Indigenous people are revitalizing their relationship with fire.
Ready?
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 I am Angela Bernard, and I'm a college lieutenant from Toledo NWT. In the previous years, we've had very bad wildfires around here. So the Yukon First Nation wildfires are giving us an opportunity to learn firefighting. Today we are working on our pumps and our hoses. This gives everybody an opportunity to get a chance in the feel of how it is on the line.
It's pretty fun, it's pretty cool, it's pretty intense. I'm learning a lot. I am worried about wildfire because as each season goes by, it's going to get drier and more hot.
Sometimes we'll say, well, it's too expensive to train people in their own communities. But when we look at the expense of bringing in international firefighters, paying them, bringing in all their equipment, maintaining these agreements, we're seeing hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes spent on a single fire in Canada. You know, that's expensive too. So I think we need to decide too what we want to prioritize for funding.
Yukon First Nations Wildfire is a partnership, limited partnership of 8 Yukon First Nations, and our vision and our goal is to protect the North. We conducted our training in the fall of 2023 in Fort Good Hope. The next summer, there was a fire that started encroaching on the perimeter of the community, and the Guardians that were trained in Fort Good Hope were some of the first responders to that fire.
Some of us were in town fighting the fire, running the water trucks, running the hoses.
Just having the training, and it benefited us a lot.
We didn't lose our homes. Having them be ready and prepared, I know for a fact that they killed it and they managed the fire. We now have all the equipment that we need, all the pumps, all the hoses, everything that we need to go out on a fire, we'll be ready to go. To make our own calls, to save our own cabins, to save our own trap lines. Instead of waiting on a call for somebody else, we'll be ready. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Lots of people think, that fire is only in the summer, and that's how we've kind of treated it in Canada, where we, fires happen, we respond to them, it's a seasonal activity, and that's it. But really, fire is a much more year-round thing. So yes, we need to do fire response, but we also need to do other things, and that includes in the spring and fall putting good fire on the ground. When it's cooler, when it's there's more humidity in the air, we can put fires on that are under control, where we want, when we want, for reasons that we want. For Indigenous people, we're talking, not only about fire that reduces risk to our territories from these bad fires, but also ones that allow us to achieve different cultural objectives that help us to live on our territories in a good way.
My name is Michaela Carrier, and I'm from Cumberland House, Saskatchewan, which is in the Saskatchewan River Delta. My dad is Solomon Carrier. We're Cree Métis, so I have a long history and ancestry in this area. In the past, part of our seasonal lives, every spring we would go out and we would set fire to all the dead grasses and willows so that we would make way for more sunlight getting in there, more plants growing, and more nutritious food for the animals.
This is how we used to do it. The old style was just go in there, get that going, and then we just keep moving.
Historically, what would have happened is people would have been traveling and they would have gone into an area that had been impacted by a lightning fire, and they would have seen the effects of the lightning fire, and they would have noticed that that area was a lot easier to travel through. There would have been a lot more berries in the area. There might have been, because of all the new green grass, they might have seen a lot more wildlife, more birds, more diversity and things around them, and then just thought, that they should try to replicate that at home.
If you don't burn, when you dig through it, it's all of this. And this is what we're trying to get rid of.
In the areas that are burned, we've been seeing lots of horsetail, we've been seeing nettle, we've been seeing some fresh willow.
What the fire promotes is new growth. When the moose and the elk, deer come, then the animals can eat it.
Another benefit of doing all these traditional burns is that in the future, if there ever is a wildfire, it won't touch these areas that have already been burned. So it's hopefully helping mitigate all the wildfires that have been happening.
Historically, we would burn to attract bison, enhance our edible and medicinal plants. Reintroducing fire is something that's in our DNA. And I still want to go not the Innisux. My name's Alvin First Rider. I work with Blood Tribe Land Management as an environmental manager. We're getting fire back on the landscape and getting our guardians trained. This year we burnt on our main reserve right in the town of Standoff. It was really successful, really clean burn.
Fire is a year-round thing. In the fall and spring, that's the times that we put good fire on the ground. In the winter, that's the times where we learn from one another, where we go and educate people in the community, where we develop plans, where we look at emergency management and preparedness. What we see is a huge role here for Indigenous fire guardians. We can have people employed year-round where their focus is on fire, and not only fire, but on healthy territories.
We're burning to help the plants, to help habitat, to attract bison and grazers for hunting. This is the goal, to have a grassland that's healthy, reigniting that relationship. It's healing the land and it's healing our people.
If you wanted to create the perfect scenario where you had massive, huge fires, we've done it by excluding fire and removing Indigenous people from the land. And then when you combine that with climate change, we're just seeing things that shouldn't be happening on the landscapes. Before, you'd get that 80 to 100 year fire, and then you wouldn't see one for another 80 to 100 years. Now, obviously, we're seeing a different world where every summer is being filled with smoke with these large out of control fires. For me, I think that I have a sadness of what's happening to the landscape. It can be depressing. But what I see here is the huge untapped potential. Fire doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be something we live in fear of every summer. We can have a better relationship with fire, and that's by using good fire on the land. Thanks, everyone. And we're going to have Jordan, who helped create that video, on here soon. So personally, I don't know if that was a good idea. I'm now a hot, sweaty, anxious mess. But here we go. So I'm really excited to be here with you all recording an episode of Good Fire. When I had the idea of doing a podcast in 2016, I never thought it would lead us to the Banff Film Festival. It's pretty crazy. So I just want to thank Megan and Yash and all the other organizers that invited us here and have just been absolutely wonderful to work with. And so I also want to acknowledge the territory we're on, Treaty 7 territory here. I'm from Treaty 6 in Rocky Mountain House, and it's always so special to come down to Banff. There is one special guest in the audience that I wanted to point out who's going to kill me for doing this, but a friend that is very dear to Alvin and I's heart is the Fire and Vegetation Management Specialist for Parks Canada, and she's been in Banff for 20 years. And she's actually, these are her last few days. She's moving on to Kelowna to start the Canadian Prescribed Fire Centre, which is so important. So I just wanted Jane to stand up so we can acknowledge you. I'm going to pay for that later. I can tell by her face. So Another thing I think we want to do is, because we're recording, and we never have done a live episode before on Good Fire. So I was thinking we could get everyone to say Tansay, which is in Cree, my language, means hello. But we were thinking, since we're in Treaty 7, we should go with Alvin's language, Blackfoot, and so it's Oki, right? So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and then say Oki, okay? Because this is going to prove to the listeners of Good Fire that there is actually other people here besides just us. Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3. Oki! Okay, there we go. Thank you. So, Alvin, the guy sitting beside me. So I had to pick a guest for this episode, and the first person that came to my mind was Alvin. As I said, this is part of his territory where his family has been, where his nation has been from. He's done, a lot of good work in Banff and other areas, and so I really wanted Alvin to come and speak about the very important work he's doing with Fire Guardians. So Alvin, I'll pass it to you, and if you could introduce yourself and what led to your interest in fire.
So, nasto go natin saksan. So yeah, I'm Alvin First Rider. I'm a member of the Blood Tribe, descendant of the Blackfeet Nation, dual citizen of America and Canada. So yeah, I kind of consider myself a citizen of no man's land, just 49th parallel, just because my people have been split up by that colonial boundary, and I grew up on both sides, so I know the struggle of Indigenous people on both sides of the border, and the kind of self-governance and sovereignty that we need to push forward as First Nations people. And just being an environmental scientist and growing up, I guess, on the landscape is kind of really driven where I kind of focus my energies, whether that's bison reintroductions or coexistent projects with wildlife, or species reintroductions, or just wildlife surveys, just different type of environmental surveys that I do. And then just from where I got my education from Salish Kootenai College, they were able to capture cultural fire knowledge from their elders from a few generations ago. So they were really able to capture the knowledge that we're trying to reignite in our people. So that kind of led to my interest in kind of re-establishing fire on the landscape. Coming back home, I started as an environmental technician with the focus of invasive species. And one of the things that we started with Paulette Fox was bison dialogues or buffalo dialogues. So looking at interviewing elders from each Blackfoot Confederacy nation and asking them what was missing on the landscape. And two of the main themes were fire and bison, in that cultural connection, but the ecological benefits that they provided, and really trying to get the youth to be able to see that on the landscapes, to visually see bison and to visually see fire on the landscape, so they could connect that those two elements were suppressed from the landscape due to colonial policy. The same with removing of Native people. So being able to kind of reignite that connection has been kind of an expression of sovereignty, but then an expression of self, right? Being able to connect from a spiritual and then a cultural level. I've been a part of our reintroduction of bison and our reintroduction of fire on the landscape, and they've kind of coincided with each other, which historically they would have based on our seasonal rounds. And being able to see our bison come back onto blood territory or blood reserve lands, and then the following spring, an actual burn, not in the same area, but kind of this with the same thought, and then to eventually burn where our bison are in our grasslands. So that kind of also leads to why we're burning and reintroducing, is the importance of grasslands. So the remaining tracts of grasslands are far and few between, and our lands have been really cut up and fragmented, and being able to focus and protect the remaining tracts of grasslands is really important to the world, in my opinion. And they've been shaped by bison and they've been shaped by fire. So to help enhance them and create that balance that Joe was talking about, we're trying to reintroduce those two elements that have been missing because of colonial policies.
Yeah, one thing people often, when we talk about carbon and other things, is people think about the forest. They don't think about how much carbon is stored in healthy grasslands as well. And so I'm also wondering, so one thing that Alvin didn't say is that he recently just got a promotion at his job. So now you're the lands department manager? Is that the
Environment manager.
Environment manager, yeah. Usually he wears a real flashy watch and necklace so everyone knows. Just kidding. Okay, so can you describe to us the Blood Reserve? What's it like there? What does it look like? What are those grasslands like that you spoke about?
So yeah, that's the largest contiguous reserve in Canada, which is small compared to U.S. reserves. It's roughly about 300,000 acres, and it historically was a grassland. So, and then it transitioned into the foothills, into the mountains. So, due to treaty and settlement, a lot of our lands got swallowed up. But I won't go into. But it's a touchy subject. But so it's right now the majority is cultivated land. And I think we have like 20% remaining grasslands that are fragmented. So we're trying to increase that connectivity, right? Connection. So our kin, our relatives, wildlife and insects and all the other living beings have a place to move freely on the landscape. So another project that we do is trying to increase that connectivity. Finding areas that we could enhance or even turn back into grasslands or tame pastures that will allow them to move freely. The dream is to have a free roaming herd that goes back and forth from our sister tribe in the States, the Blackfoot Nation, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. But yeah, the majority is cultivation at the moment, and historically was a mixed grass that transitioned to a foothills fescue into the mountain, right into Waterton. And then we have a timber limits that borders Waterton and Glacier National Park. And that's where we hunt and where we practice. And so we have roughly 13,000 members. And when treaties were being settled, I don't think they looked at the growth of First Nations people and where we were being settled and how unsustainable that is. So trying to find access to other areas that we could practice our Blackfoot way of life is really important. So we're kind of been strengthening our relationship with Waterton, which historically wasn't always on the best of terms, but in the last few years, we've been able to create momentum towards collaboration. We've been able to do burns together, species reintroduction, and they've supported different initiatives that we've done. But so we're slowly kind of changing that old school mentality of like top down to where we're actually collaborating and working together, which is really important to achieve sustainable practices, because without collaboration, it's one person trying to dictate things, and that usually doesn't work. And that's kind of what we're seeing today is due to the removal of First Nations people and bison and different disturbances like fire have really created these catastrophic conditions where we're getting these life-changing fires on the land.
Yeah, thank you. So we saw in the video the Blood Tribe Fire Guardians program, and I know that it's something that we're both very proud of. How did that program come about?
So yeah, I guess like from my schooling, knowing that fire was an element that was utilized to shape these ecosystems. and then just doing research, and then from being met or introduced to you.
I will note he doesn't remember where when he met me. So we had this discussion the other day. But yeah, it was a long time ago. We both agreed on that.
Yeah. So yeah, when we met, and then we just kind of started to kind of spitball ideas, and then we had like a collaborative meeting with the Blackfeet Nation, and from there we were able to build the program and kind of just like the basis of it, to where if there was funding available, we had a blanket application that we could apply, and then eventually get funding to try to sustain our Guardians program. So that's what we're trying to do, is create that long-term employment and that capacity, which we're slowly building. Like, we're slowly getting equipment. We've got our fire guardians trained, but it's that continuation of keeping them on, continuing the employment, right? So that's where we're at, is how to keep this as a self-sustaining program that we could have year-round. So the big gap was finding people trained to burn in the windows when it's proper to burn. Usually we would miss it because it would just be myself or one other person trying to do burns, where now we have a crew that's readily available, and then we invite other people to come in and help. But usually it's just Parks Canada from Waterton and maybe our fire department once in a while. But yeah, it's just so we could have our own in-house fire guardians to put fire on the landscape when the conditions are there.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen working for a wildfire agency that's different, is from an Indigenous perspective, is we treat fire as a year-round thing. So, you have the out-of-control wildfires, the lightning-caused fires, but fire, you're always doing stuff with fire throughout the year. And I think that the new approach has been to look at it as a summer problem. And what we're seeing is that it's not a summer problem. It's, it's becoming a massive summer problem, actually, because we've only looked at that time. And another thing you mentioned, too, was about the constant chase for funding. And I think that when we show people or talk to people about cultural burning practices, Indigenous fire stewardship, about Indigenous people being on the land, mostly we hear from people is like, well, why aren't you just doing that? But we always have to piecemeal funding. Like, even on Alvin's program, how many different funds do you have right now? 4?
4.
Yeah, to try and get a program going with 3, well, what's your crew now? You got 1 lead and...
Yeah, we have 1 lead and then 4 that are trained guardians. And then I have 2 other staff that have been trained from our environmental technician positions, and then a summer student that we just threw in there.
With training.
Yeah, but with training, and she wants to actually continue, and she's trying to find ways. So I'm trying to find funding for her to continue, at least while the crew's there. If the conditions are right, we'll do a winter burn, or having them readily available come March to May, having them there when that window's there to burn, I think is really crucial. And it's preventative, but it's also, it helps our ecosystem so much just to have fire go through the landscape. The muskrat, people there that were burning.
Solomon?
Yeah,
the
Solomon.
Carriers.
Yeah,
the muskrat people, he'll love that.
Well, they show the importance of fire and how fire suppression has just caused this overgrowth in these conditions that once fire does get in there, it's hard to stop, right? It's just going to rip through the landscape because there's so much vegetation that needs to be burnt. But once you get in there and burn and you open up that growing space, the seed bank that's sitting dormant under there, waiting for sun to hit it, the biodiversity just opens up. There's so much that comes out of the spaces once it's opened up. So it's really, from an ecological standpoint, it's really important. And then for safeguarding, like historically, that's how we would safeguard our camps. We would burn around the edges, and then it was to help us, to help us be sustainable on this landscape for hunting or for movement. Or so we didn't just utilize fire for smoke signals or whatever. There was a purpose to our fire, and it helped us shape this landscape, and then it helped us coexist here.
Yeah, one thing, once you become a fire person, the one thing is you start seeing fuel loads everywhere. So basically vegetation that's ripe to burn. And whenever I come to Banff, I just always feel so concerned. Like, we look out on these forests, like Alvin and I were just at the one bistro looking out, and the one slope of the hill is all the same type of trees. So it's all conifer trees. They're all about the same age. They're very prone to disturbance. They're very prone to fire. And that's what we don't want to see as Indigenous people. We call that a hungry forest, where we have to go a far way in that forest to get a bunch of different resources. What we really want to see is a mosaic landscape or a biodiversity. And so we were looking actually at those Mountain Legacy Project photos that are out there that are supposed to be showing glaciers, but Alvin and I were, of course, looking at the fuel loading and just noticing the change in them as well. So when you look at that, you can really see how overgrown things are getting and just how ripe, like I said in the video, we're setting up for this perfect storm of fire. So Alvin, on a positive note, so you guys did you've been doing multiple burns with the Fire Guardian program. And you did your first burn this year with no agency assistance, so no help from Parks Canada. And I don't think people realize what an achievement that is for an Indigenous group. So what is the significance of being able to burn by yourself as an expression of sovereignty?
So yeah, that self-governance, but then being able to do it the way we want to see it done is really important. So we don't have that overhanging person over your shoulder, right? So we were able to lead it, and then I was able to explain from our perspective on how the fire should be on the landscape, and then we were able to utilize what little equipment we had to control it, to control how it burnt and how it flowed on the landscape. And it was able to really get our people that experience, that firsthand experience, without having to look for somebody else. Like, they had to really be problem solvers and think on the fly, how to cut off the burn, because we were at a base of a hill and the winds would shift on us like every 3 minutes or something, and they would start panicking because they're younger, but I was able to calm them down and get them thinking on how to cut it off and where we should burn into it. And we were able to do a successful burn that was led by our guardians, and really get them that experience that they need and that comfortability, because that's the one thing, is being able to comfortably burn without panicking, right? Because you are utilizing something it's an aggressive element, but with that respect and that spiritual connection and knowing the landscape. So being able to walk the land prior to the burn and what type of vegetation is there, and then the weather conditions. So knowing how the winds could pick up and shift in southern Alberta is really important. And it really gave them that knowledge and that know-how, and then it gives them that tool to share with their family. So we have a wide range of guardians from 18 to 40, and they're able to bring that back. And maybe their grandparents or their parents will have that knowledge of when we used to burn on the landscape before people started viewing it so negatively. There's that perception of how fire is this negative, like the media really drives that home, and Smokey the Bear really drives that home, and how we're just supposed to put fires out on the landscape, and that that's really done a lot of harm to fire. Like Catholicism talks about how a lot, and through residential schools that has kind of been ingrained in the generations that had to experience residential schools. So they really associate fire with evil or negative connotations. And once they start seeing good fire on the land and they start seeing fire put back, it sparks that memory of when their grandparents utilized fire. So we're slowly changing that narrative of fire being a positive instead of just that negative.
Yeah, and language is so important. Like lots of times we always hear when we go to conferences, like, well, Indigenous people have lost their fire knowledge. That's what they say to us. Like, so you guys can't go back and put fire safely on the landscape because you've lost your knowledge. But really our knowledge was taken from our nations through systemic racist campaigns of, fire exclusion, looking at Indigenous knowledge as less, the formation of residential schools, the Indian Act, things that kept us from the land base. So it's not like Indigenous people just dropped our knowledge. It was taken from us in these ways. And then it's interesting because agencies will then use that as the reason why we can't burn or we can't learn about it, because they'll say, that we didn't, we don't have that knowledge anymore. So it's an important thing to point out about the importance of language when we're talking about these things. So I just wanted to, so now I think we're going to shift a little bit and we're going to bring up Jordan. He's ready now. So this is Jordan. Welcome, Jordan. So Jordan is the amazing videographer for ILI who shot lots of that content. Him and I work really closely together and prepared the video. So Jordan, I'll let you introduce yourself and your role and what you do and how you got into fire videography.
Okay.
Yes. I'm trying to think of a good way to word it. Whatever. Why you do what you do.
The last bit's easy to answer. You're the reason I got into fire videography. Like Amy said, I'm the lead videographer and photographer for the Indigenous Leadership Initiative, and I'm the creative director and founder of Block by Block Creative. So my job is to basically fly around, work with different Indigenous nations, guardians groups, IPCA groups, increasingly fire stewardship groups. Mm-hmm. I embed with them for a few days and help tell those stories. So what you saw tonight was at least 3 of those that we've done together.
I think 4, because it had the
Joe as well.
Too.
In the last, I guess it's been about 2 years now, mm-hmm. I've been following Amy around the country to various events, trying to capture those things. So some conferences and gatherings of different fire practitioners, but mostly the fun part, which is to go out and see people put fire on the ground and try to get those stories out to other people.
Mm-hmm. I will say that Jordan was very excited to get his first pair of coveralls for shooting fire stories. And when he said to him, I'm like, we're going to do this podcast recording. He's like, should I bring my coveralls?
I did say that to you in confidence. That's true. Yeah.
You look great in them, though.
Yeah. Well, I do like how they look, and also I did not have the proper safety gear to be filming fire, so I was very pleased when I finally acquired them.
Yeah,
so
well, that is one thing about the videographers. We're all watching, and
Yeah.
observing, but they're trying to get like the shot, and suddenly the flames are like right beside you.
Yeah.
So yeah, important to wear proper safety gear. So Jordan, why is it so important to incorporate storytelling into our fire work? What are we trying to achieve with this?
Well, I think even if we weren't trying to do it, it would happen. I mean, I think you've already heard from Alvin today. He's an excellent storyteller. Some of the people I've been around, like Joe Gilchrist, for example, who's in that opening scene there. When I first met him, if you just say the word fire, he'll just go for hours, and he'll just have stories and knowledge, and he'll bounce from his traditional stories to, talking about soil ecology and all over the place.
Sasquatch is usually in there, yeah.
Sasquatch occasionally, yeah. So there's just a lot of stories in there. So the folks who do this are going to do that just naturally. So what we're trying to do is just amplify that, put it on a bigger platform. Most of these stories, pretty much all these stories, we distribute through social media for free on purpose so that people can get access to what's going on out on the land. And storytelling through video specifically, to me, and of course I'm extremely biased, but for video and photo, I think it's the art form that can most or best transport an audience to these various places. So to the Northwest Territories while that training is happening, to Alvin's land as he's putting his fire guardians out there for the first time, to all of those quite distant places you get to come and see and hear, and hopefully, if it's evocative enough, even smell and experience what is happening in those stories. And I think that's really important because we're up against a lot of misconceptions about fire, and we're trying to take those apart as much as we are telling good stories as well.
Yeah, well, even you had mentioned to me that when we went to the first cultural fire, it was much different than what you thought it would be.
Yeah, so I was in a place, I think, of maybe most people in this room, or certainly most people out there. When I thought of fire, it was either disastrous wildfires that were destroying forests and threatening towns, or a campfire that was in a ring somewhere. There was nothing in between. And when you first said, let's go out to a burn, I was like, what do I need to do this? Is it dangerous? My wife, who's in the front row right there, was definitely like, you're going to go film what now? Kind of thing. So, but when you go and actually are on one of these cultural burns, the first, I would say the first adjective maybe is safe, but actually the first adjective is like chill. Everyone's very relaxed. Everyone knows what they're doing. It's a very jovial atmosphere. I mean, like you said in the film, you hear people laughing, kind of, hanging out. It's not that they're not concerned about what could happen, it's that they've picked the right time of year at the right place with people who know what they're doing. And so it becomes a very fun activity, actually. And that's what I'm hoping to show through some of these stories, that there are, you have videos of you with your kids and like your dogs hanging out at the cultural burn. Like that, it's more like that. It's not, a lot of times, it's not these kind of large productions, fire engines and things like that. So it's a very grounded, community-oriented kind of process, I guess, is what my observation is.
Yeah, I spend most of my time on cultural burns talking, which will probably surprise no one. Because it's almost like a social event, I guess. You go out and you catch up with people, you talk about the land, you talk about hunting seasons, you talk about signs you're seeing on the land and what that's going to mean for winter or the coming summer or other things. So Alvin, ILI, so Indigenous Leadership Initiative, has a storytellers program through the Our Land Needs Guardians campaign. I'm wearing the shirt of that campaign. So you have signed up to be a storyteller there and done a few things. Why were you interested in that program?
So just being able to tell our story, being able to capture it, the different days of it, and kind of almost like on the fly, being able to upload our stories, and also training in capacity. A lot of our youth are more engaged in like social media and those short attention videos. So being able to capture those and capture what we're doing on the landscape and being able to tell that story quickly and engaging is why I signed up. And then just I have that background too. I like photography, shooting video. And I mean, it's almost like we have it on our phones, like the latest iPhones, they almost shoot high quality videos. So like it's there, it's a tool, and being able to utilize it properly and the best way, I think is why I kind of signed up for that.
Yeah, for sure. So can you tell us, Jordan, a bit more about the Storytellers program, who's involved, what you guys usually do with it?
Yeah, so the ILI has a storytellers program lead named Jennifer, and she and I work together to recruit people from different First Nations around Canada and increasingly in the US as well. And the idea behind that is there's a ton of different reasons we do it. One is, as I mentioned, these places, you might have noticed Canada is kind of a big country with lots and lots of land area. So just physically being in the place when the good things happen is really, really important. And so that's one. But really the big important thing is that the stories that we tell through our campaign are from the people who live there, and the people who live there are in these videos. They make the decisions about where those stories go. So I don't introduce these really as my films. I do the work, I hold the camera, but the decision-making on the storytelling, that is done in collaboration. Even to show it here, that 10-minute film, we went out to every person who was in the film, made sure they saw it. If they had to go to their local governance or someone else in the community to run it by them, they did that too. And we do that as a matter of course. And that's really important, because what's the point of me putting out a film that I just think is good? That's not good enough. Like, it has to be reflective of the people who are in it, what they're trying to say. So the Storytellers program is a way to take that to the next level, where now I'm not even holding the camera. All I'm doing is helping from afar, sometimes to train people where they need a little help, whether that's editing or photography, a little bit of guidance, and then the last thing we do is just the platform. So if someone makes a 90-second, 3-minute story about what they're doing on the land, ILI has a giant social media following. We can get that out to really hundreds of thousands of people. So it's a great partnership between kind of grassroots, authentic storytellers and kind of a large communications infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that idea too of being, when things happen, you have to be there, because a lot of the communities we work with that have Guardian programs are so remote. Mm-hmm. Like, you've been on, multiple float planes and other things to get into communities. So it's great for them to be able to tell their own stories. So that's one thing that I've always appreciated about the work that we do, is the co-development approach. And so I'll say for me, I get constant requests of people wanting to come and film documentaries, with me, come cultural burn, come do all these different things. And it's quite hard, because for us, it's a very significant cultural practice. And it's not something like we're worried about energy and things like that and other important things that you might bring to a cultural burn. We also have a lot of Indigenous people who've never even been to a cultural burn. So for me, I always try to prioritize Indigenous youth. And so we do have a lot of film folks in the audience here, Jordan. So I'm just wondering, what would be your advice for filmmakers that want to work with Indigenous communities?
How many people in the room are filmmakers? One. Okay. So for the folks listening, it's a smattering. It's still a nice role reversal. Usually when I'm with you, it's me and a bunch of fire people. So this is,
that's why we said we're out of our element here.
Well, I don't know, maybe not advice is the right word, but when people come into this space, I can just speak from what I've learned over the last 7 or 8 years of doing this. Come from a very boring film background. I went to film school, I worked on TV shows, I was in those environments. And that environment is very much the director is at the head, or the author of the piece that they're doing. They make the decisions, that's how it works. And in order to do this kind of work successfully, you have to deprogram yourself from that a little bit. That don't worry, you're still going to get to express yourself. You're still going to get to do cool shots. You're still going to get to mold a story. But it's not really up to you. It can't be if you're trying to do it the right way, I think. And the authentic way is that co-authorship, because it's not just it'll make it authentic, it'll be more true. That's all right. But it's also what we talked about earlier, which is this long history of this sovereignty and this being lead on the leadership the leadership on the land was taken away from a lot of these Indigenous communities. So are we going to do the same thing with storytelling? Are we going to go into a place, mine it for stories the way you might mine for coal or oil and take it away and then never do anything again? That's not how we want to operate. So if in show business, it's the show must go on. In our line of work, my line of work, it's the relationship must go on. That's the defining North Star. So I've worked with Alvin multiple times. I hope he had a good experience, and we'll be doing it again. The folks in this video, if I wasn't invited back to that camp in Saskatchewan River Delta, 2 years in a row for work, I would probably go on my own. Those are the relationships that really matter, and keeping that front and center is important. So advice, that's what you asked me, right?
Yeah.
So one, it's to maybe just change your practice. Allow for the fact that you might not have total control over absolutely everything in the storytelling, and that's a good thing to embrace. And always be asking. And I guess this is kind of a small one, because I get the same requests too, where people are trying to come in and do various things for various reasons, from independent documentaries to reality TV shows. And I guess the thing is, don't expect people are going to be that excited that you're doing it. You're excited about your film, but this may not be the best thing that's ever happened to them. It actually might even be a burden, particularly in a small community, doesn't have a lot of resources. It can be kind of a big deal for that to happen. So just be sensitive to all of that. But I guess the big thing is go into it thinking about this is going to be a long-term relationship where we're both going to get something out of it, rather than just I'm going to extract this to make my own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think ILI, we've done co-production and other things as well, where people, so we can be involved from the start to the finish about how our stories are told. But I think one of my favorites about you is, Saul Carrier, you probably saw in the video, Solomon Carrier, he's Métis elder who does a lot of burning. And so he's the one who was burning, and he showed you all the big matted grass. That's called Phragmoides, and that's basically an invasive plant that they have there. And there's no nutritional value for many of their wildlife there in that plant. And it's just grown in insanely in the Saskatchewan River Delta there. And it's very hard to walk through, very difficult to get through. It grows, and there's usually a little bit of water there too, very smushy when you're trying to walk through and it's unfrozen. And so Solomon, though, is a champion canoe racer, world champion. And so he just motors on that stuff. And Jordan was like trying to run behind him with like all your camera equipment on. Yeah. That was so funny. Yeah.
You weren't even there.
I heard stories.
It's funny, even yeah. So I've been following Solomon around now twice now. I've done 2 shoots with him, and you're talking about the first time, which is the one that's in this video. And yeah, we're in a wetland, so we are sinking into the mud. And I have an extra 30 or 40 pounds of gear on me, so I'm extra heavy. And he is just not waiting for me. And you can hear. I'm like, I got knee deep in one of my my legs in the mud, and I hear him like, "Oh, this is a great place to burn over here." And it's like, so I'm using my microphone to kind of zero in on where he might be, because you can't see through the reeds. So I find him finally, and I was like, I can't get to you. Like, I'm gonna fall into the mud. So he picks a different spot, and he starts lighting a fire like we show. And it starts going, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Some fire shots, finally. So we're doing some fire shots, and then it goes really fast when you're in that kind of situation. And there's definitely a point where you're looking through the lens and don't have as much situational awareness of how far you are physically from what's happening. And at one point, so he's calm, cool as a cucumber, just sitting there, just hanging out, no problem. But I'm like, I need to get out of here. And knowing that I can't move fast and that I might get stuck in the mud. So there was definitely a bit of panic, but it was.
But then you got your coveralls, so you're
I didn't have the coveralls yet. Those came later. So yeah, I was very much anxious to get out of there, but it was fine. It was totally fine. Very safe, very awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and it's good we got that footage. There's a really great graphic if you go to the ILI page that shows in an area that hasn't been burned, and they went and weighed muskrats that they caught there, and then they went back a year later after they burned the area and weighed not the same muskrats but different ones, and there was significant growth just over one season in the muskrat health. And so
twice as big.
Yeah. And so they used to have hundreds of thousands of muskrats they would trap there in a year, and now they can barely get like 20 or 30. So it just shows how unhealthy that environment's become and how much fire could help there. And so just before we go to audience questions, Alvin, I just wanted to bring it back to you to talk about the Buffalo Treaty. So if you could explain what that is in your area, and then, how you're involving fire to bring buffalo back.
So yeah, like I mentioned, it was based off of Buffalo dialogues that were done with Paulette Fox and Blackfoot elders, Leroy Little Bear, and then a bunch of Blackfoot elders. So we went to each nation and interviewed, talked about what was missing, and they all mentioned bison. So from that, the bison restoration kind of movement was kind of formed. And I believe in 2014, the Buffalo Treaty was signed in Browning, Montana. And that was to really enhance buffalo restoration on the landscape, and it really took off. Like it's like worldwide. Like people from New Zealand have signed it, and right down to Mexico, and Banff, I think, is a signatory. So like the federal government has signed on, and institutions and just individuals have signed on, and we just had the 10-year anniversary last year, and it was to celebrate what has been accomplished. There's been tribes all over that have kind of reignited that relationship with bison in their territory, and we're one of them. Like we reintroduced a herd of 40 in our grasslands, and we've seen them exponentially grow. They're at 100 now, and just in a few years, and they've changed the ecosystem so much to where it's enhanced it. Like we've seen burrowing owls return, and logger-headed shrikes where they haven't been. Like we do migratory bird surveys, and we haven't documented them in 10 plus years, and this year we actually seen like burrowing owls, and they reproduced, and logger-headed shrike that are directly associated with our bison. They nest by our bison paddock and utilize a tree, and then they use our bison paddock for their hunting there. And then just other species that rely on them, whether it's antelope and then the cultural value, like we're at that point to where we could call them and utilize them for our spiritual practices. We utilize bison every piece, and there's different spiritual connections to different parts of them that we're able to reconnect with now when we harvest our own bison, where bison weren't readily available 10 years ago. And now that we're able to have our own herd, and we're able to kind of reconnect with that spiritual connection that was been suppressed because they haven't been on the landscape. But yeah, it's really about bison restoration, and then that coincides with fire and water and everything else from a holistic perspective. Like, how are we managing the land to ensure that all those elements have a space in our territory? So it really kicked off kind of indigenous-led land management practices that have been suppressed, but we're getting the ball rolling, and we're seeing momentum pick up, and it's tremendous things. And I just can't wait to see where it goes in the next 10 years.
Nice, yeah. I know people always say that we're fire obsessed, and I know, Jordan, you probably think that, but really what we are is healthy landscape obsessed, right? We want healthy landscapes to carry our cultures out on, and one way we can do that is by returning fire. It's a very good, we have a relationship with fire. It was given to us as a gift to be able to create those healthy lands. And so I think we'll open now. I think we have about 15 minutes for questions. Yep. So if we have anyone from the audience, there's a mic there and a mic there, I guess, if you want to come up, and we'll happily take any questions.
Thank you. I have a question for perhaps all three of you. I'm not sure I understand what the specific barriers are to having planned burns on First Nations lands. Are there provincial or federal laws that prevent that? Do you have to get a permit from a non-First Nations entity before you can have a burn? Does it vary from province to province? Can you clarify that, please?
Yes, it's very complicated, unfortunately, but there's multiple barriers that exist. So we have like local laws, we have provincial laws like the Wildfire Acts, we have federal laws as well that keep us from burning. And so the first fire exclusion law came in Canada was actually 1608 in Newfoundland, where it said no one shall set fire to the forest. And what, European settlers that came over, what they saw was timber, right? And it's like, well, why the heck would we burn that or let that burn in a fire? But really, that was an Indigenous stewarded landscape that needed regular burns. And so those fire exclusion policies, regulation laws are still there today that we deal with all the time. And even on reserve, where technically you can burn without a permit or permission or other things like that, we'll still have agencies come on and say you shouldn't be doing that or you're not allowed. And another thing for us is lots of times they'll say, well, we have to approve you, that they're the experts, that they know about our knowledge. And it becomes, as Alvin was saying, a question on Indigenous sovereignty, right? That we're the ones who know the land and our practice, and we shouldn't need approval from another outside agency. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Alvin, about the barriers you guys face.
I guess other barriers are funding, right? Capacity, having the right amount of people, or being able to, I guess, pay that living wage. So
the training. Too, yeah.
And then just having them there for that specific window when we could burn, I think is really the huge barrier. Because there is, even though we may have 3 months, like out of those 3 months, we may only have 10 days that are prime days to burn. So like those windows are very small. And we need to be readily available. So like the one burn we did this fall, it was just, I come home and I told them, we're going to go out and burn. It's going to be calm. It's perfect for our burn. So that's what we did. Like we were able to capitalize on that. But yeah, also is just that perception. Like it's been so ingrained in people that fire is negative that once people see fire on the landscape, they call to get it put out, right? And that's a huge barrier, because then you got different agencies coming responding to fires or trying to put it out. So that educational and awareness piece is huge, I guess, ensuring people that we know what we're doing and that we shouldn't have to ask permission, but we do follow like Species at Risk Act and all those type of federal things. I am an environmental scientist by trade, and we're not trying to harm the environment, we're trying to enhance it. So, but yeah, I guess that collaboration thing, like I have invited different agencies out, and like I said, I've only had Parks Canada come out. So there's also that reluctancy to come out and learn. Most fire agencies are about fire suppression and about putting fire out on the landscape. So once they see it, they want to put it out. They don't want to let it run. And that's what we want to see. We want to let it burn the land, and then let it kind of fade out. But it's a complicated question.
Yeah, the other one I was thinking is liability. So lots of times, even when we're burning on reserve, people will come and say like, well, if that gets out of control, you're liable. And so we know people who've done cultural burns for years and years who've never had an escape burn. And so agencies have escape burns, and they, have liability funds that cover that, whereas Indigenous people don't. So it's something that we constantly, there's a fear, I think, of that people have ingrained in them too, is this whole issue of liability as well. And then you mentioned the Species at Risk Act, but that's a hard one for me because like some of it's wrong in there, like from an Indigenous perspective. Like the pileated woodpecker is a firebird, that's protected in Species at Risk, and you're not allowed to burn near a pileated woodpecker nest, but they literally depend on burned forests. So it's very like some of the stuff in there is even frustrating, and we just constantly have to do advocacy to try and get things changed. Hopefully that answers your question. There is a paper I can give you called The Right to Burn, Barriers to Indigenous Fire Stewardship.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I have one from my seat.
Okay.
What is the size of these birds? Are you talking 10,000 acres, 100 acres? I don't know.
What is the size of the burns was the question, and a really good question, because we're used to looking at prescribed fires that tend to be very large burns, especially here in Banff, right? You're doing much larger fires. What I say with the burns we used to do, or we do, I guess, is because we're trying to do a lot of small fires. So in the end, you're trying to get a big total acreage, but every day you're only burning a little bit. So for me, I would burn like a hectare or two by myself. And then the next day you would go and burn the next. You've got a crew, so you'd probably do bigger, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's still much smaller, and that's the need for the year-round employment, right? So that you have people that are always there instead of just, going and hitting it at once in one day and bringing in all this crew and equipment. You're literally, so instead of seeing a big column of smoke, you're seeing small columns of smoke. That's kind of how I describe it to people. Do you want to add anything?
No,
No? Does that make sense? Yeah? Oh, thank you.
Hello, I have a question really for Jordan, and regarding your production process, I suppose. I saw the film at the beginning of the symposium, and it was really beautifully made film. As a filmmaker myself, I was really interested in, you were saying how you you produce and you also get out, distribute a lot of this content for free, for nothing. And so my question is really, how are you then, balancing the books, making it possible for you to be able to do that kind of work? Because, that's exactly the kind of work that I want to be doing, but I gotta make that work somehow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you bring up an important point. So we don't, when I say we in this context, I'm talking about the ILI. We don't charge for the films. We put them out on the internet at multiple lengths. Sometimes you'll see a 90-second version of it, sometimes a 10-minute, sometimes 42-minute, depending on what we're doing. ILI is an NGO. It has it raises its funds to do its advocacy as part of that mission. Communications is a huge part of it. So I have a job. I get hired to do these films. I have absolutely no financial interest in their success because we give them away for free. So I could negotiate for 20%, but be 20% of zero. So that's how it works. So I get paid to do this kind of thing. I deliver films, photographs, multimedia content. I'm not sure where the person who answered the question there is.
Over there.
That kind of thing. And that's what my company is based on. That. So we work for NGOs and nonprofits exclusively, and that's the kind of services that we do. We don't do films on our own in the traditional sense. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, for Indigenous Leadership Initiative, we are funded solely from philanthropy. We don't have any government funding or anything, so that's all the money for our comms has come from big philanthropic groups that believe in our vision and our mission for Indigenous communities.
Yeah.
Soriette, do you?
So in looking around at this audience, I think most of us are probably white folks who haven't lived your experiences, and most of us are not fire experts, and most of us don't work in government policy. So my question is, how do people like me and many in this audience support what you're doing most effectively?
Great question. So we have a group called the Thunderbird Collective, which is our national Indigenous fire group in Canada. So you can go on our website, thunderbirdcollective.ca. And pretty soon we'll be having different ways that people can support us, because we get that question quite a bit from folks is, how do you do it? I think another thing is, really what I say for like allies that want to help with the work is that you might not be involved in fire, but lots of times you're like in institutions or structures, right, that have colonial, I don't know how to say it nice, but like, exclude Indigenous people, or you know what I mean? So I have racist systems. And so what I always say to people is like, because lots of allies want to come and like watch us burn. They want to come, like I have people all the time from the podcast contact me and say like, can I come learn your ways? And it's like, well, no, that's not really what we're trying to do here. We don't even have like youth that have learned our own ways. But, where do you work? Okay, well, I work for a government agency. Okay, well, your government agency has the Wildfire Act. So you should use your power as a government player to try and bring about change in that area. So that's mostly when I'm speaking to fire people. It's like looking around you. But for the broader public, it's even just sharing the message, right? Like even on social media, a lot of the posts we do, even on the ILI site, get horrible racist feedback. Like it's just crazy. The comments that we get, we try and control it and things like that. But even having allies, that speak out and just say like, oh, I did hear about that. And that's actually a really positive thing that they're doing. It might seem little, but it actually really helps to change people's mindsets. Do you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, no, just education and awareness, help spread the word is really important. And then, just reach out if you have questions. But collaboration and not being afraid to actually reach out to First Nations people and help, I guess. Funding's always important. Yeah.
But the thing I'd add to that is some people think, you share a video on Facebook or whatever, it's slacktivism, right? It doesn't matter. It really does. We're social media or digital media online. That's not just a play toy. That's how most of the world communicates with one another. It's where they learn and where they get educated. So you sharing that among your circle is enormously helpful. And we literally cannot do what we do without other people coming on board, championing these ideas and sharing them. So I can't emphasize that enough. And just in your circles, the other thing I would add too, and I don't even know if I've told you this, Amy, but there's so many issues we work on in the environmental space, human rights space, that seem absolutely impossible to tackle. Mm-hmm. It just seems so big and so complicated, and we work on it and we try, and it feels really impossible. This is one issue area that I work on that it really does seem possible that we can mitigate these big, out-of-control wildfires. We can actually do something about this in a very real way, and Alvin and people like him are the people doing it. So that's something you can tell people. Watch this video. This is something we can actually do. I wish I could snap my fingers and solve climate change tomorrow. I don't think I can, but I think if we put more folks like this in charge of the things they want to do anyway on their land, then we actually have a shot at reducing these fires and making it better.
Yeah, and I think I'll just maybe close by saying that's one thing. I was on a radio show yesterday with Edward Alexander, who's a Gwich'in man, who's a lead for the Arctic Council in dealing with wildfire, and he was just talking about all these horrible things about permafrost thaw and Yedema. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it has more methane and carbon that will be released when it thaws than I think 1,000 times of what we produce during the entire industrial revolution of burning fossil fuels. So there's really scary things, and I was saying a bunch of stuff too, and then the radio host was kind of like, is there any hope? And we were like, of course there is. But that's just the thing, is that we need to be aware of the severity of the problem. This is a very serious thing that we're facing here as a society. And there are solutions in terms of Indigenous fire stewardship, having healthy lands that are more adapted to climate change. And it just takes small investments in communities like Alvin's. His Fire Guardian program runs for about $400,000 a year. If you consider all the money that we spend on fighting out of control fires in the country, that's just peanuts, and that they do a substantial amount of work to reduce risk and fight fire there. So I think I'll just leave it at that. We don't have anybody else at the mic, and I see we're right on time too. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us.
This is the Good Fire Podcast, stories of Indigenous fire stewardship, cultural and social empowerment, and environmental integrity.